The sky above the Dragon Empire was painted in shades of red and gold. Smoke from distant fires drifted lazily across the horizon. The war had been long, cruel, and merciless. Yet today, the people whispered a single name with hope and reverence: the Dragon Emperor. He returned earlier than anyone expected. The war was supposed to last another season, but victory had come swiftly. Rumors spread across the empire that the emperor had achieved the impossible, defeating enemies that even the bravest generals feared. Villagers, soldiers, and merchants alike felt relief ripple through their hearts. For the first time in months, the empire seemed alive with joy. The emperor himself rode through the city gates atop his massive, black-scaled dragon. His armor glimmered in the sun, battle-worn but magnificent. His eyes, sharp and golden like molten metal, scanned the streets. The people bowed, knelt, and cheered, shouting his name in unison. But he barely noticed. Victory was not enough to ease the weariness in his soul. He had seen too much. He had faced foes that twisted the mind and shattered the body. He had lost men he called brothers and sisters in arms. And yet, nothing could have prepared him for what awaited him in his own palace. The streets of the capital were alive with celebration. Banners fluttered in the wind, and the sound of drums and trumpets echoed off the high walls. Servants ran to light lanterns, children waved small flags, and traders gave free food to passers-by. The Dragon Emperor rode past it all in silence. His mind was not on the celebration. It was on one thought: his human maid. Her name was Lyria. She had been in his service for as long as anyone could remember, quiet and loyal, always working in the shadows. She served him meals, cleaned his chambers, and carried messages, never asking for recognition or reward. The emperor had trusted her more than many of his generals, yet a strange feeling gnawed at him now. Something was different. Something was wrong. He reached the gates of his palace. The massive doors were thrown open by armored guards, their faces tense but proud. Inside, the grand hall glittered with crystal chandeliers and polished marble floors. The air smelled faintly of incense and oil. Soldiers and servants alike bowed deeply, yet the emperor's eyes searched for the one person he wanted to see most. Lyria appeared, carrying a tray of food. She froze the moment she saw him. Her hands trembled slightly, and her eyes darted away, as if she had seen a ghost. The emperor frowned, noticing every detail. Her behavior was not like her usual calm, precise self. He dismounted his dragon and walked slowly toward her, armor clinking softly. The sounds of celebration faded behind him, replaced by the soft rhythm of his boots on the marble floor. "Lyria," he said, his voice calm but commanding. "I am home." She dropped her tray in surprise, the food clattering to the floor. She bowed quickly, almost hitting her forehead on the marble. "My emperor, I did not expect. Her words stumbled over each other. The emperor watched her silently, his golden eyes narrowing slightly. He could feel the tension in the air. Something was off, something he could not yet name. He did not speak. Instead, he observed. Every slight movement, every nervous glance, every subtle twitch of her fingers told him a story that words could not express. He walked past her slowly, pretending to inspect the hall, while actually noting every corner, every shadow. His gaze fell on a locked chest in the corner of the room. He had never seen it before. Its wood was dark, polished, and unmarked by the usual dust of neglect. Something told him it did not belong here, yet it had. The presence of the chest, combined with Lyria's strange behavior, set his instincts on fire. The emperor stopped near the chest and let his gaze drift over Lyria once more. She was trying to act normal, wiping her hands on her apron and arranging the fallen dishes, but it was too late. His mind raced. Could she have been hiding something? Could someone have entered the palace while he was away, using her as a cover? He let out a slow breath and decided to play a dangerous game. He would not confront her yet. Not today. Not until he understood the full picture. He would watch, wait, and gather every small piece of evidence. The emperor had learned over decades of war that patience was more deadly than a sword. Hours passed. The celebration outside continued, but inside the palace, tension mounted. Lyria moved with unusual caution, avoiding the emperor's direct gaze. She cleaned, dusted, and whispered to herself under her breath. Every now and then, she glanced at the locked chest, biting her lip nervously. The emperor followed her every move with silent precision. Night fell. The city outside glowed with lanterns and torches, but the palace interior grew darker, more secretive. The emperor retired to his private chambers, but sleep did not come easily. He thought of the war, of the battles he had fought, but most of all he thought of Lyria. What was she hiding? And why now, of all times, did her behavior change? He dressed in simpler robes, leaving his armor behind. The emperor walked silently through the palace halls, listening to the faintest sounds. A door creaked somewhere. A whisper carried down the corridor. He followed instinct, not making a sound, every muscle ready. Then he saw her. Lyria moved through a hidden corridor, carrying something small and glowing in her hands. Her face was pale, her eyes wide. She did not notice him. She whispered in a language the emperor did not understand, her words flowing like a secret melody. His heart tightened. She was hiding something far more dangerous than he had imagined. The emperor did not confront her yet. He retreated into the shadows, letting her pass. He watched as she disappeared down a hidden staircase, leading to a part of the palace few knew existed. A shiver ran down his spine. His instincts screamed danger, yet curiosity burned brighter than fear. He realized something important. Victory in war was meaningless if danger lurked at home. His empire, his throne, and perhaps even his life might be at risk, not from enemies outside, but from secrets within. And that secret was in the hands of the one person he trusted most. The Dragon Emperor returned victorious from war, but in that moment, he understood that the real battle was only beginning. A silent war of shadows and secrets awaited him. And the first piece of that puzzle was Lyria, the human maid who had always served him faithfully, until now. As the moonlight spilled through the palace windows, casting long, eerie shadows across the floor, the emperor's golden eyes narrowed. The night was long, the palace silent, and yet every heartbeat, every whisper, every shadow told him one undeniable truth. Nothing in this palace was as it seemed, and so the emperor waited. The next morning, the Dragon Emperor awoke to a palace that seemed the same as ever. Yet he could feel the weight of unease pressing against him. The sun streamed through the tall windows, gilding the marble floors, but the golden light did nothing to warm his heart. He had returned victorious from war, yet victory felt hollow when danger lurked within the very walls he called home. He dressed quickly, leaving his armor aside. Today, he would walk among his people and see the celebrations. Yet, his mind remained fixed on one person, Lyria, his human maid. Her strange behavior the previous night gnawed at him. He remembered her trembling hands, the whispers in the hidden corridors, and the glowing object she had carried. Her loyalty had never been in question before, but now doubt cast a shadow over his trust. Lyria appeared again in the grand hall, carrying a basket of fresh bread. She moved carefully, almost silently, avoiding the emperor's gaze. He watched her closely from a distance, pretending to speak with his generals while noting every movement she made. Every small twitch, every glance away, every pause in her steps whispered a story he did not yet understand. The emperor had fought countless battles, faced enemies who used deception and trickery, yet nothing tested his instincts like this. He knew war, he knew strategy, he knew betrayal, but the palace had always been a place of order, of loyalty. And now, one person's behavior threatened to shake the very foundation of his trust. He decided to test her subtly. He walked past her casually, asking about minor tasks, the state of the kitchens, and the schedule of servants. Lyria answered, but her voice trembled slightly. She avoided his eyes, her gaze darting to the locked chest he had noticed yesterday. Her movements were careful, deliberate, as if every step she took was weighed against a hidden scale of danger. The emperor's golden eyes narrowed. He let the conversation flow naturally, but inside he analyzed every word, every pause. His mind worked like a weapon, dissecting the smallest detail. Something was hidden, something important, and he intended to uncover it. As the day went on, the Emperor watched her more closely. She moved through the palace with precision, yet she was clearly burdened by fear. At times, she would glance toward corners of the hall or over her shoulder, as if expecting someone, or something, to appear. His curiosity grew with every movement, every hesitation. By afternoon, the Emperor decided to follow her discreetly. He walked behind her as she carried supplies to the servants' quarters. Her steps were careful, measured, but he noticed a strange rhythm to her movement. She avoided certain hallways, glanced frequently at the locked chest, and muttered words under her breath that he could not understand. He paused near a column, letting her pass out of sight. His sharp senses detected every sound. The soft scuff of her shoes, the rustle of her clothes, the faintest sigh of relief when she thought she was unobserved. He realized something chilling. Her secret was not just about her. It could affect the entire palace. That evening, he called his trusted generals to discuss the return from war. But his mind was elsewhere. Their talk of strategy, alliances, and enemy movements felt distant. His eyes kept drifting toward Lyria, who was cleaning the windows, her back slightly hunched, her hands trembling as she wiped the glass. Every small detail was a clue, every motion a sign. He had faced spies, traitors, and assassins in battle, but never had he been so uncertain about someone so close. The sun set, painting the palace in deep shades of orange and purple. Shadows stretched across the marble floors, curling around pillars and corners. The Emperor observed her as she moved, noting how the shadows seemed to follow her like silent witnesses to a secret world he could not yet see. He decided to confront her indirectly. He approached her casually, speaking of trivial matters, testing her reactions. He asked about the cleaning, the preparations for the next day, even the weather outside. Lyria answered quickly, too quickly, her eyes flicking to the locked chest as if seeking reassurance. The Emperor's instincts screamed caution. He knew she was hiding something, but the question remained, was it dangerous, or was it protective? Had she betrayed him, or had she acted in secret to safeguard him? As night fell, he waited in the shadows once again. The palace was quiet now, save for the soft rustling of servants finishing their tasks and the distant hum of the city outside. He followed her as she moved toward the hidden staircase she had used the previous night. Her steps were cautious, deliberate, but there was urgency in her movement that he could not ignore. She paused at the top of the stairs, glancing down at something the Emperor could not yet see. Then she whispered words in the strange language again, her voice barely audible. The glowing object she carried flickered softly, casting strange patterns on the walls. The Emperor's heart pounded. Every instinct screamed danger, yet he did not move. He observed silently, understanding that the moment to act had not yet come. To act too soon could ruin everything. Patience, he reminded himself, was the greatest weapon a leader could wield. Suddenly, Lyria turned, as if sensing him, and froze. Her eyes widened, and for a moment, the Emperor saw fear, pure and unmasked. She bowed slightly, muttering a word that he did not understand. Then, as quickly as she had paused, she continued down the hidden staircase, disappearing into the shadows below. The Emperor waited a long moment before retreating. He returned to his chambers, mind racing. She was hiding something, yes, but why? And from whom? The palace felt suddenly foreign, filled with secret paths, hidden messages, and unseen dangers. He realized something vital. The war he had fought on the battlefield was nothing compared to the war he faced now, within his own palace. Here, trust was a weapon, loyalty a shield, and every shadow could conceal a dagger. And the first clue to this new war was in the hands of Lyria, the human maid he had trusted above all. As he lay down that night, staring at the ceiling of his chambers, he knew the next day would be crucial. He would need to uncover her secret, but he had to be careful. One wrong move could destroy the one person who might be protecting the Empire in ways he could not yet imagine. The suspicion grew, gnawing at him like a relentless flame. The Dragon Emperor had returned victorious from war, but the true battle had only begun. And the closer he got to the truth, the more dangerous the game became. The palace at night was a labyrinth of shadows. The golden light of the chandeliers had faded, leaving only the soft glow of moonlight filtering through tall windows. The corridors that had seemed familiar by day now felt strange, mysterious, almost alive. Every corner held a whisper, every shadow a secret. The Dragon Emperor walked quietly through the silent halls. His senses, sharpened by years of war, caught even the faintest sound. A creak of a floorboard, a distant sigh, the subtle flutter of a curtain. He had returned victorious from the battlefield, yet the true challenge awaited him here, within these walls. Something hidden, something dangerous, stirred in the darkness. He had watched Lyria all day, observing her strange behavior, her nervous glances, her careful movements. Now, as night fell, he was determined to follow her more closely. He needed to understand what she was hiding. From the shadows, he saw her emerge from the servants' quarters. She moved with careful precision, carrying a small bundle wrapped in cloth. Her eyes darted around nervously, and her steps were light, almost silent. She did not notice him yet. He stayed in the darkness, moving like a shadow himself. The Emperor's heart raced. He had faced enemies with deadly blades, creatures that could kill with a thought, and armies that could crush nations. But nothing had prepared him for this quiet tension. The sense that a single misstep could reveal a secret far greater than any battlefield victory. Lyria turned a corner into a narrow corridor he had never noticed before. The walls were lined with ancient tapestries depicting battles and dragons long past. She paused, listening, her ears tuned to sounds only she seemed to hear. Then, she whispered words in the strange, unknown language again. The bundle in her hands glowed faintly, casting a soft light that flickered across her face. The Emperor crept closer, staying in the shadows. His mind raced. What could be so important, so dangerous, that she had to move in secret at night? He had trusted her for years. She had served him faithfully. And yet, her actions now suggested a hidden world he had never suspected existed within his own palace. He followed her down the corridor, his presence invisible in the darkness. She moved toward a hidden staircase, one he had seen briefly before but never explored. The steps were narrow and twisted, leading down into a part of the palace few knew existed. The Emperor's instincts screamed caution, yet curiosity burned brighter. As Lyria descended, he stayed above, watching her vanish into the shadows below. He noticed the faint glow of the bundle reflecting against the walls. It pulsed like a heartbeat, a light alive with secret power. The Emperor's mind worked quickly. He had fought magic before, faced enemies who wielded strange and dangerous forces, but never had he encountered something like this inside his own home. He moved silently down the staircase, careful not to alert her. Every step was calculated, every sound muted. The palace had become a battlefield of shadows, and he was determined to uncover the truth. At the bottom, Lyria paused in a small chamber, dimly lit by the glowing object she held. The walls were lined with books, scrolls, and strange artifacts he did not recognize. She knelt on the floor, opening the bundle carefully. Inside was a scroll, its surface shimmering with strange symbols and faint, magical light. The Emperor watched from the doorway, hidden in darkness. He could not understand the language, but he could feel the power emanating from the scroll. It was ancient, dangerous, and important, and it belonged to Lyria, the one person he had trusted above all. She began to whisper again, her voice soft and urgent. Her words carried a rhythm, a pattern that seemed almost like a spell. The Emperor felt a chill run down his spine. This was not ordinary magic. It was something far older, far more dangerous. Suddenly, she looked up, her eyes wide with fear. For a moment, she seemed to sense him, as if the shadows themselves had betrayed her secret. But she did not flee. Instead, She continued her work, speaking faster, more urgently. The scroll's glow brightened, illuminating her determined face. The Emperor's mind raced. Was she protecting him, or plotting against him? Every instinct screamed both caution and curiosity. He had faced deception before, but this was different. The stakes were higher than any war he had fought. He stepped closer, careful to remain hidden, and watched as she completed whatever ritual she was performing. The glow from the scroll subsided, leaving only a faint shimmer. She closed it carefully, placing it back in the bundle. Then, she rose slowly, her eyes scanning the chamber, as if expecting an intruder. The Emperor exhaled slowly. She had risked everything. But why? And from whom? He realized something crucial. Lyria's secret was not just a personal matter. It involved the safety of the entire palace, perhaps even the empire itself. The risk she took could save lives or destroy them. He had to know the full truth. The night grew colder, and the shadows lengthened. The Emperor retreated silently, returning to the main corridors. He could not confront her now. The danger was too great, and revealing his knowledge too soon could ruin everything. Patience was a weapon he had mastered long ago, and he would use it now. As he returned to his chambers, he considered the path ahead. The war outside had been brutal, but the war inside was more dangerous, more unpredictable. One wrong move, one misstep, and the secret Lyria carried could lead to betrayal, chaos, or worse. The Emperor knew he had to act carefully. He had to uncover the truth without alerting her. He had to watch, wait, and prepare for the moment when he would demand answers. And so, the shadows of the palace became a battlefield. Lyria moved like a ghost, the glowing scroll a silent weapon in her hands. The Emperor followed like a shadow, a silent observer of a secret war unfolding in the heart of his empire. The night was far from over, and the closer he came to the truth, the more he realized that victory in battle was meaningless compared to understanding the secrets within his own palace. The Dragon Emperor had returned victorious from war, but the true test of his strength lay in the darkness of the palace, in the secrets Lyria held, and in the shadows where trust and betrayal intertwined. The next morning, the palace seemed quiet, almost too quiet. The celebrations from the war's end had faded, leaving the grand halls empty except for the occasional servant hurrying to complete their tasks. But for the Dragon Emperor, silence brought no comfort. It was in the quiet that secrets thrived, and he knew Lyria's movements had changed. She was no longer the calm, reliable maid he had known for years. He observed her carefully, walking past her casually in the hall, pretending not to notice anything. But every flick of her gaze, every nervous adjustment of her hands, told him that she was hiding something important, something dangerous. The Emperor's mind worked as swiftly as it had on the battlefield. He had seen deception before, had learned to read the smallest tells, and he knew that the time for subtle observation would soon come to an end. He needed answers, but not yet. He spent the morning watching her. She moved through the palace with practiced care, but there were differences he could not ignore. Her eyes lingered on the locked chest, her movements were sharper, and she seemed to check her surroundings more than usual. She whispered under her breath occasionally, though he could not understand her words. By midday, the Emperor decided to test her indirectly. He approached her in the kitchen, asking questions about the preparations for the next day, the state of the storerooms, and even the schedules of other servants. Lyria answered quickly, almost too quickly. Her voice trembled slightly, and she kept glancing toward the chest in the corner. The Emperor narrowed his eyes. She was hiding something, and the risk of discovery made her nervous. He understood now that this was no ordinary secret. Whatever she carried, or whatever she knew, could have consequences far greater than simple betrayal. As the day progressed, his curiosity grew. He knew that confronting her directly could be dangerous. If she were protecting the palace, revealing her knowledge too soon could put her, and the empire, at risk. He decided to wait, to watch, and to find the moment when her secret would reveal itself naturally. Late in the afternoon, he saw her move toward the hidden staircase once again. The Emperor followed discreetly, keeping to the shadows as he had before. He could feel his heart beat faster, the tension of anticipation and suspicion twisting in his chest. Down the staircase, she carried the bundle with care. Her movements were swift but cautious, as though she feared detection at every step. The Emperor's senses were alert, every nerve on edge. He had faced ambushes, traps, and enemies who struck from the shadows, but none of that compared to the uncertainty now. He did not know if Lyria was a friend, a spy, or something in between. In the lower chamber, Lyria knelt on the floor, setting the bundle down gently. She opened it carefully, revealing the glowing scroll. Her hands shook slightly as she unrolled it, the ancient symbols shining softly in the dim light. She whispered words in the strange language again, her voice urgent, yet controlled. The Emperor stepped closer, remaining hidden but observing every detail. He saw her lips move, the patterns of her fingers, the careful arrangement of objects around her. He realized that this was not simple magic. Whatever she was doing was deliberate, calculated, and incredibly important. Suddenly, she froze, sensing perhaps that she was being watched. Her eyes widened with fear, and she glanced toward the staircase. For a moment, the Emperor considered revealing himself, demanding the truth. But something stopped him. He could sense her intentions, hidden beneath layers of secrecy and fear. She was acting to protect something or someone. He stayed in the shadows, silent, watching as she continued her work. Slowly, she unrolled another small scroll, this one even more delicate and fragile. Her hands moved with care, as if every mistake could bring disaster. The glow from the objects illuminated her face, revealing the depth of her concentration. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, she spoke in a trembling voice. "I must protect him, at all costs." The Emperor's golden eyes narrowed. Her words were simple, but they carried weight. Could it be that she was not hiding betrayal, but courage? He felt a flicker of hope mixed with the tension that had gripped him all day. He decided it was time. Stepping from the shadows, he revealed himself. Lyria jumped, spinning around to face him. Her face turned pale, and her eyes filled with terror. "My Emperor, she began, her voice shaking. The Emperor raised a hand, not in anger, but to command silence. "Lyria," he said, his voice calm but firm. "Explain." She fell to her knees, lowering her gaze. "Please, my Emperor, do not destroy me. I only acted to protect you and the palace. The enemy, they infiltrated the city while you were at war. They sought to destroy everything we built. I discovered their plan, and I acted in secret to stop it." The Emperor's mind raced. She had risked everything, hiding in shadows, whispering ancient words, carrying objects whose purpose he could not yet understand. The glow, the secrecy, the whispers. It all made sense now. She had not betrayed him. She had saved him, and the entire palace. He remained silent, letting her words sink in. The enormity of her courage, her loyalty, and her intelligence became clear. The maid he had doubted, the human he had thought small and powerless, had acted where even generals might have failed. Lyria's eyes glistened with tears. "I feared. If you knew too soon, they would have killed me. Or worse, the empire would have fallen." The Emperor took a step closer, his expression unreadable. The weight of responsibility, the memories of war, and the realization of her bravery pressed down on him. He had returned victorious, but the true victory lay not in the battlefield, but in this quiet chamber, with this human who had risked everything to protect him. He knelt slightly, looking her in the eyes. "You acted without my orders," he said softly. "Yet you risked your life, and the empire itself." Lyria bowed her head further, trembling. I only wished to serve my Emperor. I never wished for recognition, only to protect you." For a long moment, the Emperor said nothing. The silence was heavy, filled with understanding, relief, and a hint of admiration. Finally, he spoke. "You have done what many could not. Your courage is greater than the fear you carried. I owe you more than words can express." Lyria's eyes widened. She could not believe what she had just heard. The emperor, who had returned from war victorious and feared by enemies near and far, was acknowledging her bravery. And yet the tension remained. There were questions to answer, threats to uncover, and dangers still lurking in the shadows. The emperor rose, his expression still unreadable. "We will discuss this fully," he said. "But for now you have saved us all. Your secret remains safe, for you have earned my trust once more." Relief washed over Lyria, but she remained vigilant. She knew the war within the palace was far from over. Secrets still lingered, dangers still moved in shadows, and the Dragon Emperor's vigilance would not allow complacency. The emperor left the chamber, his mind alive with plans. He had returned victorious from the battlefield, but the true war, the war of loyalty, courage, and hidden dangers, had just begun. And Lyria, the human maid who had risked everything, had become a key player in this silent, shadowed battle for the empire. The palace was quiet once again, but the Dragon Emperor could feel the tension lingering in every corridor. Though the sun had risen, its light could not reach the shadows that now seemed to live within the palace walls. Secrets moved silently here, and one of them had just revealed itself. Lyria knelt in the same hidden chamber as the night before, the glowing scroll carefully rolled and tucked back into her bundle. The emperor entered quietly, his golden eyes sharp and focused. Today there would be no half measures. Today the truth had to be told. He stood before her, his presence commanding yet calm. "Lyria," he said, "enough shadows. Tell me everything. No omissions. No hesitation." She looked up, fear mingled with resolve in her eyes. "My emperor, I feared your wrath, but you deserve the truth." She took a deep breath, her voice steady despite the trembling of her hands. She explained everything in simple words, her story spilling like a river long held back. While he fought in the distant lands, an enemy force had infiltrated the capital. Their aim was not only to destroy the city but to assassinate him and seize the empire. The attack had been planned with precision, and the enemy spies were cunning and dangerous. "I discovered their plot," she continued. "I intercepted messages, observed secret meetings, and found their magic, ancient and forbidden. I could not tell anyone, for if I did, the spies would have killed me, and the empire would have fallen." The emperor listened, every word sharpening his understanding. Her bravery, her intelligence, and her courage were more extraordinary than any warrior he had led into battle. She had acted in secrecy, risking life and honor to protect him and the empire. He asked about the scrolls, the glowing objects she had carried, and the strange words she had whispered. Lyria explained that they were ancient protective spells, designed to detect intruders, uncover lies, and shield the palace from dark magic. She had studied them secretly, learning from old texts that had been hidden for centuries. She had performed the rituals to weaken the enemy's influence and prevent disaster. The emperor's golden eyes widened as the pieces came together. "You carried out these rituals alone?" he asked, his voice a mix of awe and disbelief. She nodded, bowing her head. "I could not risk failure with others involved. The secret had to remain hidden. Only I could act in time." A long silence followed. The emperor paced the chamber slowly, his mind alive with thoughts. He had fought in wars, conquered enemies, and faced betrayal, but he had never encountered loyalty and courage of this magnitude. The human maid he had doubted, the servant he had barely noticed in the grand scheme of the empire, had saved them all. Finally he spoke, his voice calm but heavy with meaning. "Lyria, you risked everything. You acted without my orders, without permission, and yet you succeeded where generals might have failed. You are extraordinary." Tears filled her eyes, but she did not speak. She had feared punishment, execution, or exile. Instead, the emperor's words brought relief, validation, and a sense of pride she had never felt. The emperor continued, pacing thoughtfully. "Your actions could have been seen as betrayal, but in truth, they were heroism. You protected me, the empire, and every soul within these walls. Few could have done what you have done. Lyria's voice trembled as she finally spoke. I only wished to serve and to protect the Empire. I never sought recognition, only survival, and your safety, my Emperor. He nodded slowly, a rare smile touching his lips. You have earned my trust, completely. Not as a maid, not as a servant, but as a guardian of the Empire. Your courage has changed everything. Your secret remains safe with me. Her relief was palpable, but the Emperor's expression grew serious again. However, this does not end here. The enemy is still out there. Their plans may have been disrupted, but they will recover. We must prepare for the next threat, stronger than before. Lyria rose, standing beside him. Together, they looked at the scrolls, the ancient magic, and the hidden chambers she had worked tirelessly to protect. The Emperor understood that she was no ordinary human. Her wisdom, bravery, and strategic mind rivaled those of the greatest generals he had commanded. You have my word, he said firmly. Your actions will not be forgotten. The Empire owes you a debt impossible to repay. But your life, your freedom, that is yours to keep. You will serve as my advisor, my secret guardian, and no one will question your loyalty again. Lyria bowed deeply, tears of gratitude streaming down her face. The Dragon Emperor's acknowledgement was more than she had ever dared hope for. Her years of quiet service, her courage, and her intelligence were finally recognized. But even in that moment of triumph, the Emperor remained vigilant. The enemy was still out there, and the palace, though safe for now, was filled with shadows. Lyria had revealed her secret, but the war of shadows was far from over. The Emperor walked to the window, looking out over the city. Smoke from distant fires still lingered on the horizon. The war had not truly ended. It had only taken a different form. The palace, his throne, and his empire were safe for now, but danger would always find a way to challenge them. Turning back to Lyria, he spoke quietly but firmly. You have shown me that courage comes in many forms. You have taught me that even in victory, vigilance is eternal. Together, we will protect this empire from every shadow that seeks to destroy it. Lyria nodded, her resolve as firm as his. She had acted in secret, faced fear, and risked her life. Now, standing beside the Dragon Emperor, she knew that the Empire had recognized her courage, and she was ready for whatever the shadows might bring next. The Dragon Emperor had returned victorious from war, but the true victory, the triumph over hidden threats and secret enemies, had been achieved by someone few would have ever expected. A human maid had risked everything, and in doing so, she had proven that courage, loyalty, and intelligence were the greatest weapons of all. In that quiet chamber, with the glow of ancient magic fading and the city outside alive with life, the Emperor and his human maid stood united. Their bond, forged in secrecy and danger, had become unbreakable. And though the shadows still moved beyond the palace walls, one thing was certain. The Dragon Emperor and his trusted guardian would face them together. The palace was quiet, yet tension hung in the air like a storm waiting to break. The Dragon Emperor had returned victorious from war, faced enemies on distant battlefields, and now stood in his own chambers, confronted with the consequences of trust and secrecy. Lyria, the human maid who had risked everything, knelt before him, awaiting his judgment. The Emperor paced slowly, his golden eyes narrowing in thought. The events of the past days played through his mind like a war replay. Lyria's trembling hands, the glowing scrolls, her whispered words in a strange, ancient language, and the bravery she had shown in facing threats hidden from all others. He had come to understand the truth. She had acted alone to protect him and the Empire, using knowledge, skill, and courage that few could ever possess. And yet, she had disobeyed him. She had lied, hidden secrets, and acted without orders. He stopped pacing and looked down at her. Lyria, he said softly, you risked everything. You defied my commands. You hid your actions from me, and yet, you saved the Empire. Her eyes glistened with fear and hope. She had expected punishment, perhaps even death, but the Emperor's voice carried neither anger nor betrayal. The Dragon Emperor turned toward the window, gazing at the city below. The sun was rising, casting golden light across the palace gardens. He thought of his soldiers who had fought alongside him, the generals who had strategized tirelessly, and the people of his empire who looked to him for protection. One question remained. How should he reward loyalty that had taken such a dangerous, secretive form? He spoke again, this time without looking at her. I have faced armies, assassins, and magics darker than the night itself. I have seen men betray their friends for power, and yet, in my palace, a secret battle has unfolded without my knowledge. You have chosen courage over obedience. You have risked your life for the Empire, and for me. Lyria bowed lower, her hands trembling. I only wished to serve my Emperor. I feared that telling you would bring harm or worse. The Emperor's gaze softened. He took a step closer. You have shown me that true loyalty is not blind obedience. True loyalty is courage. True loyalty is wisdom. And you have shown all of this, despite the danger. He paused, considering the weight of his decision. He could call the generals, expose the secret, and punish her for disobedience. Protocol and law would demand it. But he knew better. She had acted for the Empire, not for herself. Her bravery had saved countless lives. To punish her now would be a betrayal of justice and of reason. Finally, the Emperor spoke, his voice firm and decisive. Lyria, you will not be punished. Your actions, though hidden, were honorable. You will remain by my side, not as a maid, but as my advisor and guardian of the Empire's secrets. Your wisdom and courage will guide us both, for I trust you more than many who bear titles and swords. Tears of relief streamed down her face. She had feared the worst, yet she was being honored for her bravery. She could barely speak, but finally, she whispered, I will serve faithfully, my Emperor. The Emperor nodded. You will serve not out of fear, but out of choice. The Empire owes you a debt it can never repay, and I owe you my life. The shadows that move against us will always exist, but together, we will face them. He looked around the chamber, his mind racing with plans for the future. The city outside was peaceful now, but threats still lingered beyond its walls. Spies, enemies, and ancient dangers would test the Empire again. But with Lyria by his side, he felt a renewed sense of strength. Her courage had proven that loyalty and intelligence could match the power of armies. Lyria rose, standing beside him, her eyes shining with determination. She no longer saw herself as a simple maid, but as a guardian, a strategist, and a protector of all that the Emperor cherished. The palace, once a place of shadows and hidden fears, now held a bond of trust stronger than any wall or guard. The Emperor turned to her, his golden eyes meeting hers. Remember this, Lyria. Courage is not measured by the sword or the scale of armies. It is measured by the willingness to act when no one else can. Today you have proven yourself beyond measure. The Empire is stronger because of you. For a long moment, they stood together in silence. The glow from the remaining scrolls cast soft patterns across the walls, like the last traces of secrets slowly fading into history. Outside, the city began to stir with life, unaware of the peril that had been narrowly avoided. The Emperor finally spoke again, his voice quieter but filled with authority. The world is not only shaped by battlefields and war cries, it is shaped by decisions made in silence, by courage hidden in shadows. And today, you have shaped it, Lyria. She bowed deeply, tears in her eyes, her heart filled with pride and relief. She had risked everything, faced fear alone, and emerged with honor. And now, she stood recognized, not just as a servant, but as a hero. The Emperor turned to look out the window again, the first rays of sunlight warming the palace. He knew challenges would come again. Shadows would move, secrets would emerge, and enemies would test their strength. But with Lyria by his side, he was confident. She had proven that loyalty, courage, and intelligence were forces as powerful as dragons and armies. And so, the Dragon Emperor made his decision. He would honor her, protect her, and trust her with the future of the Empire. Together, They would face the darkness that lingered in the world beyond, in the hidden corners of the palace, and within the hearts of those who sought to harm them. The shadows would always exist, but courage, loyalty, and wisdom would always shine brighter. And in that chamber, with the rising sun and the glowing scrolls, the Dragon Emperor and Lyria began a new chapter for the Empire. One forged in secrecy, courage, and trust. The Dragon Emperor had returned victorious from war. But the true victory, the one that ensured the survival and future of the Empire, had been decided in silence, in shadows, and in the bravery of the human maid who had dared to risk everything. And so, the palace was quiet once more. But the bond between Emperor and Guardian was unbreakable, stronger than any threat, any enemy, or any secret. Together, they would protect the Empire, and the story of courage in the shadows would live on.